Greetings, fellow humans. We have a vinyl community thread going on about showing your vinyl 1980s soundtracks. This was started by Josh, I think, at the flip side. I saw it when Beth at Miss 80s took part. I thought, yeah, I've got a few 80s soundtracks. Obviously lots of them on CD, but that's not the point. Vinyl, yeah, this should, not very many, should be quick. And then I counted them up, and there are 97. So let's rattle through them as quickly as we possibly can, shall we? I've done these by year of the decade. So we start off with 1980. Airplane. Thank God it's only a record. Elmer Bernstein. The Blue Lagoon. You can't go wrong with Basil Poledouris. By the way, I'm the sort of person that those who know me and who follow my channel will know that most of my soundtrack collecting is scores. I've got a few of the kind of songs albums, and you will see some of those on here, but it's mostly scores. The Competition, that's a Lalo Schifrin. Of course, The Empire Strikes Back. This is the recent Varese reissue. Sort of facsimile of the original one, but yeah. And The Final Countdown, it's John Scott, I believe. Yes. I have a German version from Colosseum Schallplatten of John Carpenter's The Fog. The Long Good Friday by Francis Monkman, who sadly passed away very recently. The original LP presentation of Masada. If you're into Goldsmith, get the multi-disc CD version of that, it's very good. The Shining, which is much more common than people seem to want it to be. Sadly, my copy's got some marks there where a sticky label was torn off it. But hey. Now we're on to 1981. There's The Burning by Rick Wakeman. And Clash of the Titans. I think this is certainly one of the first films that I remember. I went to the cinema with my dad to see that, Clash of the Titans. Here we have a nice UK TER edition of John Carpenter's Escape from New York. There's Excalibur, obviously selections of classical. Look at that Bob Peak artwork on the front of that. You can't go wrong with Bob Peak, can you? And then Bill Wyman, Green Ice. One of the biggest hits of the decade, not Heaven's Gate. That's David Mansfield. Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. Maybe he'll do Part 2 soon. Night Crossing, Goldsmith, marvellous. Prince of the City by Paul Chihara. That's an early TER before they did that little corner flash thing that's become their trademark. Quest for Fire, Philippe Sard. That's a nice gatefold of that. And Superman 2, which I'm pretty sure I've got my Supermans 2 and 3 in wrong order, but what the heck, I'll show them anyway. Yeah, so here's a Superman 3, that's later in the 80s, but what the heck, we'll get to 2 in a minute. Superman 3, that's Ken Thorne. Then we get to 1982. That was the original. You know, obviously Vangelis' own version didn't come out until many years later, but this was the orchestral version of Blade Runner soundtrack. Creepshow, that's a recent reissue. Gatefold. We've got On Golden Pond. Grusin, I think he won an Oscar for that one. And The Sword and Sorcerer, I've got 2 different territory versions of that with different artworks by different painters. And Turkey Shoot. That's Brian May, not the Queen Brian May, the Australian Brian May. And Yes Giorgio, which is mostly Michael J. Lewis. It's got some classical songs on it, obviously being a Pavarotti thing. And it's also got a love theme by John Williams. I found this in a charity shop for something like 25p, which I was most pleased with. Then we get to 1983. Brainstorm, very good James Horner. And Christine, there's the original Songs album. And Perez's recent re-release of the score. And we have The Keep, which was not available in a legitimate form for many, many years. But this came out fairly recently, Tangerine Dream. One of my favourites of theirs, at any rate. And we have Monty Python's Meaning of Life. And more Tangerine Dream is Risky Business. Stuart Copeland's Rumblefish. Here's that other Superman. I've got them in the wrong order. This is the one that has got... Let's see if we can get that on screen. Can you see those? Laser etched Superman logos in the vinyl. Which is quite funky. "12 Chairs" by John Morris. I bought this in the much missed 58 Dean Street Records. The Wicked Lady, Tony Banks. Got that quite recently. David Shire's 2010. You see the price label on there. HMV $5.99. Oh no, so that's on to 2000 and that's on to 1984 with 2010. We also get Against All Odds, which is Michel Colombier. What else have we got? We've got Flashpoint, another Tangerine Dream. Got that one quite recently as well. Greystoke, Mr. John Scott. Had that a long time. That's really good. Gwendolyn. It's Pierre Bachelet. It's good, fun sort of 80s synth, cheesy stuff. It's a classic. Killing Fields, Mike Oldfield. The Lonely Guy. This is one of the shortest things you can possibly imagine to be put out on a full-size record. It's ridiculous. Don't know if you can see the run-out area on there. It's almost half the disc on that side. Yeah, there's a CD version that is recent and somewhat longer. Obviously, being 1984, there was 1984. This is a recent Record Store Day for 2018 release. John Williams is The River. Richard Hartley's Sheena. As I speak, it is the 28th of July and Richard Hartley's birthday, so happy birthday to him. We have Splash by the great Lee Holdridge, and The Terminator, Brad Fiedel. Then 1985. What's the most iconic film of 1985? Well, one of them has got to be Back to the Future, surely. Obviously this has got a lot of the songs, Huey Lewis and whatnot, plus a couple of tracks of Alan Silvestri's score. 9 minutes, coming up to 10 minutes. Better Off Dead. We have The Black Cauldron by Elmer Bernstein. This is a Spanish edition. For that we have The Breakfast Club and Maurice Jarre's The Bride, and this is a German edition. Die Braut. Edith's Diary by Jürgen Knieper. Very Saraband. And one of Goldsmith's classics is Explorers. Another of the best of the 85 is The Goonies. This is a fairly recent Varese re-release on gold coloured vinyl. John Barry, Jagged Edge. Wilfred Joseph's Mata Hari with Sylvia Crystal. Out of Africa, John Barry. This disc is possibly one of the things that I've owned longest, because when I was a kid this was in the possession of the cinema where my mum worked, and then when she retired and the cinema was closed down, we brought this disc with us. That's in good nick for a thing from 1985. And what else do we have? We have Subway, which is Eric Serra, and the great Weird Science. So, what do you want to do first? What do we get? We get into 1986. 1986, we have George Fenson's 84 Charing Cross Road. That's a Varese release as well. We have the great James Horner, American Tail. Mixture of songs and some kind of synth score by Stanislas Sidoritz for Biggles. An early Alan Silvestri, The Delta Force, which was a Canon production and a fairly low budget, so he was doing the whole thing on his synclavier, so no orchestra for that. Emma's War by John Williams, and you might go, I don't recognise that. It's because it's not that John Williams, it's the other John Williams, the guitarist, wrote his only film score. We have Howard Shore's The Fly. We have The Golden Child. Howard the Dark. Thomas Dolby stuff on one side, John Barry stuff on the other side. John Scott, I do like me John Scott. King Kong Lives. The Maurice Jarre, The Mosquito Coast. Another John Scott, Mountbatten, The Last Viceroy. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Three Amigos. I love this. I've got this on various formats. 2 copies on vinyl. Got it regular CD, and I think it's probably an expansion of that as well. Top Gun, of course. This Fast Waves Trick or Treat. This was re-released fairly recently, but that's the original version from back in the day. And one that I searched and searched, and eventually, I think it was hard to get at the time. But again, I got it in 58 Dean Street Records. It's Young Sherlock Holmes, Bruce Broughton. This is an absolute banger. If you're into orchestral scores, it is. I think it's one of those ones, like The Goonies, that you would say is the best John Williams score that John Williams didn't write. Again, 58 Dean Street Records. There it is. Yeah. So pleased when I went in there and I saw they'd got that. It's like, I want it. Then we get to 1987. Cry Freedom, which is Fenton again. and Dragnet. Dragnet. Just the facts, ma'am. Score is by Ira Newborn on one side, a bunch of songs on the other side. I do like The Art of Noise. Harry and the Hendersons, Bruce Broughton doing very good kind of classical Mozartian stuff on there. Hellraiser, Christopher Young. It's a recent Mondo release, Gatefold. Sorry, the reflections are not showing that up very nicely in my windows, but there we go. And Hope and Glory by Peter Martin. Excuse me. Inner Space. Yeah, Rod Stewart's is the name that shows very largely on that cover, but Jerry Goldsmith is the star, really. We have Lethal Weapon. There's obviously Michael Kamen with his collaborations with Clapton and Sanborn. Another Mondo is Monster Squad. It's Bruce Broughton again. Fun gatefold. What else have we got? So we're getting towards the end of '87. We've got Near Dark, More Tangerine Dream, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, Robocop. This is the TER one with the metallic embossing of the title. I don't know whether you can see that there. The Witches of Eastwick. I have a sneaking suspicion that I got that in 58 Dean Street as well. Yes, I did. 27th June 1994. Nice. That was another one that was not available on CD for a very long time. So that's that. We're getting towards the end of it now. 1988 and 1989, the numbers tail off quite a bit. 88, we've got Coming to America. Songs album. We've got The Deceivers, John Scott again. Good Morning Vietnam. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Silvestri, another one of his best, I think. This one came with a big fold-out poster. I'm not going to unfold it now. And A World Apart, which has got some kind of African music, but also early Hans Zimmer. And then we get into 1989, end of the decade. We've got Lethal Weapon sequel, #2. Look at this, we've got obviously Michael Kamen again, Eric Clapton, David Sanborn, also George Harrison, the Beach Boys, Randy Crawford. Zimmer really hitting his stride with Rain Man. This is kind of where he hit the big time, I think, perhaps. And to round the decade off, Carly Simon's Working Girl. That is my vinyl for the 80s. Gosh. Till next time, stay fresh, cheese bags. Quick postscript. While I was putting all those away, I spotted two more, and I don't know why I didn't pick those up before. Batman, that's 1989, so that counts. And batteries not included. Gosh, that's a very crinkly sleeve. Take that out of there. Batteries not included. It's James Horner. That's, what is that? That's 88, something like that, I think. 87. Yeah. So that's two more.